Hello everyone, let me ask you something. When was the last time you felt your partner truly looked at you? Not just glanced across the dinner table, not just brushed by you in the hallway, but really saw you. The kind of look that made you feel wanted, alive, like the two of you were still capable of sparking fire in the middle of an ordinary day. For many couples, especially after years of routines, responsibilities, and unspoken resentments, that look becomes rare. Desire doesn't disappear because love is gone. No, often love remains, but desire thrives on mystery, on imagination, on the space between two people. And when life piles up, children builds fatigue. It's that space that disappears. What makes a spouse long for you again isn't just about changing your clothes or planning another date night. It's about rediscovering what made you magnetic in the first place. It's about breathing oxygen back into the dynamic that has slowly flattened under the weight of predictability. Tonight, we're going to talk about how to awaken that spark. Not by tricks or manipulation, but by learning how to create presence, play, and polarity again. If you've ever wondered whether it's possible to make your spouse truly desire you again, the answer is yes, but it begins with you. When couples reach their 30s, 40s, and beyond, something quietly begins to shift. The responsibilities multiply, work becomes demanding, children need attention, families require care, and slowly, without either of you realizing it, the passion that once felt effortless begins to fade. What used to be thrilling, those glances, those moments where you could hardly wait to see one another, starts to feel replaced with routines and obligations. And then, one day you catch yourself asking, how do I make my spouse desire me again? Desire, unlike love, is not guaranteed. You can love deeply, you can be the most reliable partner, and still find that the erotic thread between you feels thin, because desire is not born out of comfort. It is born out of curiosity, aliveness, and the ability to look at your partner not as an extension of you, but as a separate, fascinating human being who could still surprise you. The truth is, most of us fall into the trap of believing that if we provide stability, love, and care, then desire should naturally follow, but it doesn't. Desire withers in the soil of routine. It thrives instead where there is space for imagination. Think about it. When you first met your partner, you didn't know every detail of their day. They weren't predictable to you. There was room for discovery. That gap, that distance is what made them alluring. And when that gap closes completely, desire struggles to breathe. So where do we begin? The first step is to shift the way you see yourself inside the relationship. Too often people think, if only my partner would change, then I'd feel desired again. But the real power begins with you. If you want to be desired, you must first remember how to be desirable, not in the sense of superficial looks, but in energy, in presence, in the way you carry yourself through the world. Desire is less about the body you have and more about the life force you radiate. Imagine this for a moment. You're at a dinner party. Across the room, your spouse notices you laughing, engaged, vibrant. They're reminded of that spark you once carried so naturally. In that moment, they don't see the parent of their children, the roommate who shares bills, or the predictable partner who always takes the trash out on Tuesdays. They see you as a separate being, magnetic, alive, and suddenly that feeling, that longing returns. That is the first key to rekindle desire. You must first rekindle your own vitality. This does not mean you need to change who you are. It means you must remember the parts of yourself that perhaps have been buried under the weight of responsibilities. What passions have you set aside? What hobbies did you once enjoy that made you light up from the inside out? When was the last time you did something simply because it made you feel good, not because it was productive or necessary? Your spouse desires you most when they can see that you still have a life force, a spark that isn't entirely consumed by them or by the shared routine. The second step is about cultivating presence. Too often, couples live side by side but not together. They share the same space, but their attention is elsewhere, on phones, on work, on the endless to-do list. Desire is not born in absence of attention. It's born in the quality of presence you bring when you are together. Ask yourself honestly, when you sit with your spouse, do you really see them? Or are you half distracted? Do you still touch them with curiosity or only out of habit? Presence means slowing down enough to notice the way your partner's mouth curls when they're amused, the way their voice lowers when they're serious. Presence makes the ordinary suddenly intimate. Because when you look at someone with your full attention, you awaken their sense of being seen, and nothing stirs desire like the feeling of being truly visible. But here's the paradox: desire also needs distance. If you're always together, always accessible, always predictable, there is no room for longing. Longing requires that you sometimes step back, so your spouse has space to lean forward. This is where many couples stumble. They believe that constant closeness will keep passion alive, but in truth, it often suffocates it. What actually rekindles desire is the rhythm between closeness and distance, between the moments you come together and the moments you stand apart. Think about when your spouse is away for a few days. Suddenly, you miss them. You imagine what they're doing, who they're with. Your mind creates stories, fantasies. That longing is the fuel of desire. And yet, once they return, you often fall right back into the pattern of over-familiarity. What if you could keep that spark alive even without the forced absence? This is where presence and distance play together. When you are together, be fully there. And when you are apart, allow yourself to remain just a little mysterious. Sometimes that mystery can be as simple as not always explaining every detail of your day, or dressing up unexpectedly for no reason, or holding back a story until the right moment so you have something to share that surprises them. Small shifts create big ripples. I often say, desire lives in the space between what is known and what is unknown. Too much familiarity and you risk suffocation. Too much distance and you risk disconnection. The art lies in balancing both. So if we return to our question, how do you make your spouse desire you again? The beginning is this: awaken your own vitality, cultivate your presence, and reintroduce just enough mystery to remind your partner that you are not entirely theirs to predict. You are still your own person, still capable of surprises, still worth desiring. And as we continue, we'll go deeper into how you can embody this balance, not just as an idea, but as a daily practice that changes the way your spouse looks at you. You see, desire is not something you can demand. You cannot turn to your spouse and say, "I want you to want me," and expect that longing to reappear like flipping a switch. Desire is not obedient. It resists obligation. The moment you make it a duty, it disappears. What desire responds to is intrigue. It's the way you stir curiosity. It's the way you keep your partner guessing just a little. The way you create an energy that feels alive rather than stagnant. So let's talk about another crucial element: playfulness. When couples lose their playfulness, they often lose their spark. Because playfulness is what allows us to stop carrying the weight of the world for a moment and simply delight in each other. Think back to when you first fell in love. You teased, you flirted, you made inside jokes. You weren't just practical partners managing a household. You were lovers who created a private universe of laughter and intimacy. That world still exists, but it requires your effort to keep it alive. Many couples tell me they feel like roommates rather than lovers. Why? Because their conversations revolve entirely around logistics: who's picking up the kids, what's for dinner, did you pay the bills? Those conversations are necessary, but if they dominate, you leave no room for seduction. Seduction is not just for the bedroom. It's in the way you smile at your spouse across the room, the way you text them something playful during the day, the way you touch their hand in passing with just a bit more intention. Desire feeds on playfulness because play reminds us that intimacy is not a task, it is a joy. Now, playfulness requires vulnerability, and vulnerability for many people is difficult. To be playful, you must let go of control. You must allow yourself to be a little silly, a little spontaneous, a little unpredictable. But here's the beauty. When you dare to step out of your rigid adult roles for even a few moments, you invite your partner to do the same. Suddenly, you're not just co-parents, colleagues, or housemates. You're two human beings sharing a spark of joy, and that spark has the power to ignite desire again. Another important piece is the concept of polarity. Polarity is the dance of differences, the dynamic tension between masculine and feminine energy, or between the giver and the receiver, the pursuer and the pursued. Now, polarity is not about rigid gender roles. It's about energy. In the beginning of a relationship, polarity is strong because each person shows up differently. One may initiate, the other may respond. One may create mystery, the other may lean into it. Over time, however, these roles often blur. Everything becomes symmetrical, equal, balanced. Balance is wonderful for stability, but it is not what fuels desire. Desire thrives on contrast. Let me give you an example. Imagine a couple who spends every evening together watching television side by side. They are close, they are comfortable, but nothing about this moment creates excitement. Now imagine one evening, one of them dresses up unexpectedly, puts on music, and invites the other to dance in the living room. Suddenly the energy shifts. One is leading, the other is following. One is offering, the other is receiving. This is polarity in action. It's the difference that creates attraction. So, how do you reintroduce polarity into your relationship? You begin by noticing where you've become too symmetrical. If everything is shared, if every action is predictable, then someone must dare to step out of the script. Desire is sparked when one of you surprises the other, when one takes the risk to lead and the other allows themselves to be carried. It could be as simple as planning an unexpected outing, or as subtle as changing the way you touch your spouse. Firmer, lighter, slower, bolder. These shifts reawaken the dance of energy, and your partner responds not because you told them to, but because they feel it. Another essential aspect of desire is admiration. Ask yourself, when was the last time you looked at your spouse with admiration, not just appreciation? Appreciation is for what they do. Admiration is for who they are. Desire is fueled when we feel seen, not just for our usefulness, but for our essence. When your spouse knows you admire them, not just for paying the bills or helping with the children, but for their humor, their creativity, their resilience, they feel elevated in your eyes. And when someone feels elevated, they naturally become more magnetic. But here is where many couples go wrong. They stop showing admiration. They focus on what is missing, what is frustrating, what is lacking. They criticize more than they praise. And slowly, the partner begins to feel invisible, undervalued, undesirable. If you want your spouse to desire you, you must first awaken their desire to be seen. Show them that you notice who they are, not just what they provide. Speak to their strengths, acknowledge their efforts. Remind them of the qualities that drew you to them in the first place. When admiration flows, desire follows. Let's also talk about physicality. Touch is one of the most underestimated languages of desire. Not all touch is equal. There is functional touch. The quick hug, the pat on the shoulder, the peck on the lips before leaving the house. These are gestures of affection, but they are not gestures of passion. Passion requires intentional touch, the kind of touch that lingers just a second longer, that communicates, I see you, I want you. Touch has the power to awaken parts of us that words cannot reach. Consider how your partner reacts when you touch them differently. Instead of the habitual kiss, try brushing your lips across their cheek, then pulling back. Instead of a quick hug, place your hand on the small of their back and pause there. Desire grows not in the repetitive, but in the unexpected. It's in the subtle shifts that make familiar gestures feel new again. But remember, touch must be paired with attention. If you touch absent-mindedly, while your mind is elsewhere, your partner feels it. Presence again is key. When your touch says, you are my focus right now, it carries an erotic charge even in the simplest moments. Finally, let's address one of the most overlooked truths about desire. It requires self-respect. If you do not respect yourself, if you do not take care of your own body, mind, and soul, your spouse cannot carry that desire for you. Many people forget this. They expect their partner to fill in the gaps that they themselves have neglected. But desire is a mirror. It reflects what you project. If you move through life exhausted, resentful, and disconnected from yourself, your spouse will struggle to see you as desirable. But when you invest in your own well-being, when you nurture your body, when you cultivate confidence, your partner responds almost instinctively. Because the truth is, nothing is more attractive than a person who respects themselves. It is not vanity, it is vitality. Your spouse doesn't want you to be perfect. They want to see you alive, present, and confident enough to carry your own spark. That is what makes them long for you again. So as we go deeper, remember this desire is not a mystery reserved for the lucky. It is a practice. It is a rhythm you create with your spouse through playfulness, polarity, admiration, touch, and self-respect. And when you dare to reintroduce these elements, you awaken not only your spouse's longing, but also your own. You've probably noticed something already. When we speak about desire, we're not just speaking about sex. We're speaking about energy, about presence, about the invisible currents that pass between two people. Sex is one expression of desire, but the foundation of longing runs much deeper. So let's talk about imagination, because imagination is the secret ingredient that keeps relationships alive. Without imagination, marriage becomes a contract of predictability. With imagination, it becomes a dance of endless possibilities. Do you remember the early days of your relationship when you would fantasize about the future, the trips you might take, the things you would try, the life you would build? That sense of possibility was erotic. It wasn't just about where you were then. It was about the space you were moving toward together. Over time, couples stop imagining. They live in routines. They stop dreaming. They stop creating stories together. And when imagination dies, so does desire. So what if you reintroduced imagination into your relationship, not only through fantasies of intimacy, but through the way you dream together again? Try asking your spouse questions that awaken possibility. Where would you love to travel if money were no issue? What's something you've always wanted to learn but never dared to try? These questions open the door to curiosity. And curiosity is deeply erotic because it reminds us that we do not fully know one another. Imagination also means daring to step out of your comfort zone. If you always go to the same restaurants, take the same vacations, follow the same bedtime routine, then you leave no space for surprise. Desire needs surprise. It thrives when something breaks the pattern. So, consider how you might introduce novelty. Plan a date in a place you've never been. Learn something new together. Invite adventure back into the life you share. It doesn't need to be extravagant. It simply needs to be different. Another piece is communication. Desire cannot exist in silence. But here is the paradox. Too much transparency can also kill desire. If you explain every thought, every feeling, every movement, then you leave nothing to the imagination. The art is in balance. Enough honesty to create safety, but enough mystery to keep the spark alive. This is why communication in desire is less about talking and more about evoking. It's not about telling your spouse, I want you to desire me. It's about creating moments, gestures, words that naturally evoke that response. Sometimes that might mean whispering something unexpected in their ear, something playful or suggestive. Sometimes it might mean simply asking, what would feel exciting to you right now? Many people believe that talking about intimacy ruins the magic. In reality, silence is what ruins it. Couples who dare to speak, even if awkwardly at first, are couples who open the door to new possibilities. Now let's speak about the erotic self, because desire is not just about your spouse seeing you, it's also about you seeing yourself as desirable. Many people forget that they once looked in the mirror and thought, I am someone worth longing for. Over time, as the years pass, as life wears us down, we lose touch with that erotic identity. We see ourselves only as caretakers, providers, responsible adults. But to rekindle desire, you must reclaim your erotic self, the part of you that enjoys being alive in your own skin, the part of you that delights in touch, in pleasure, in play. Ask yourself, when do I feel most alive in my body? Is it when I'm dancing, when I'm swimming, when I'm dressed in clothes that make me feel attractive, when I'm laughing with friends? Those moments are clues to your erotic identity, and when you cultivate that, your spouse notices. Because desire begins with how you carry yourself in your own body, not with what you ask your spouse to do. But there's another truth we must acknowledge. Sometimes desire is blocked by resentment. Couples often carry years of unspoken frustrations, the unpaid emotional debts, the unresolved conflicts, the disappointment swept under the rug. These resentments sit like stones on the heart, weighing down the possibility of passion, because it's very difficult to desire someone you're angry with, or someone you feel doesn't hear you, or someone who has hurt you in ways that remain unacknowledged. So, part of rekindling desire is not just about adding play, mystery, and imagination. It is also about clearing the blocks. This means having the courage to address the unresolved. It may not be easy, but honesty, when paired with compassion, clears space for passion to return. Otherwise, the unspoken resentment sits between you like an invisible wall. Here's the irony. Many people think that if they bring up their frustrations, they'll ruin the relationship further. But often, the opposite is true. Naming the tension releases it. It allows you both to breathe again. And when you can breathe, you can desire. Finally, let us speak about longing. Desire is at its core, the space between what you have and what you want. Too much closeness can suffocate longing. Too much distance can extinguish it. But the healthiest relationships are those that allow just enough space for longing to live. This means you must be willing, sometimes, to step back, to let your partner miss you, to create moments of absence, not as punishment, but as a gift, because absence is what makes presence feel electric again. Think of it this way: when you leave for a short trip, or when your spouse spends an evening out without you, you feel their return more intensely. The heart grows fonder, as the saying goes, but it's not just sentimentality. It's that in absence, imagination comes alive. You wonder what they're doing. You picture them in different contexts. You remember why you long for them. That longing is what desire feeds on. So, if you want your spouse to desire you again, remember this: it is not about forcing or demanding. It is about creating conditions in which desire naturally flourishes. Playfulness, polarity, admiration, imagination, communication, clearing resentments, and allowing longing to exist. These are not tricks, they are practices. They are ways of living that keep you both alive to each other. And here is the most important part: you cannot wait for your spouse to start. If you wait, you will wait forever. Desire begins with you, with the energy you choose to bring into the relationship, with the risks you're willing to take, with the courage to reawaken your own vitality. When you do, you invite your spouse to join you, and more often than not, they will, because no one is immune to aliveness. When you glow, your partner feels the heat. Let me tell you something I've observed in countless couples often. What we think is the death of desire is not the death of desire at all. It is simply its retreat. Desire doesn't vanish. It withdraws when the conditions no longer nourish it. Like a flame starved of oxygen, it doesn't die, it waits. It waits for a spark, for a shift, for the breath of life that invites it back. And that breath of life comes when you dare to break the monotony of daily life. Couples get stuck not because they don't love each other, but because they've stopped creating moments that pull them out of autopilot. Think of it like music. A song without rhythm is flat. A relationship without moments of intensity, surprise, and pause becomes flat too. To make your spouse desire you again, you must reintroduce rhythm. Sometimes that rhythm is a bold gesture, other times it's a subtle pause. But always it is intentional. Consider how powerful it feels when someone you love breaks the script. You expect them to walk through the door tired and distracted, but instead they walk in, hold your face, and kiss you with full attention. You expect a mundane evening, but instead they take you by the hand and say, "Come, we're going out." These small acts disrupt routine and signal, "I still see you, I still want you, I still choose you." Desire awakens not because of what you say, but because of what you do differently. And yet it's not only about the grand gestures, it's about the daily micro moments. The way you lean in just a little closer when they speak. The way you whisper something private in public that only they can hear. The way you brush past them in the kitchen with a touch that lingers a second longer than necessary. These moments are not about sex alone. They are about erotic energy. The energy that says, "I notice you. I am drawn to you." Now, some people will say, "But what if my spouse doesn't respond?" This is a very real fear. You may feel that if you dare to be vulnerable, to reintroduce intimacy, you risk rejection. And that is true. But here is the greater truth. The absence of risk is the absence of desire. Desire always carries risk. When you reached for your partner the first time, you didn't know if they would reach back. That uncertainty was part of what made it exciting. Over time, couples avoid risk to protect themselves from disappointment. But in doing so, they also protect themselves from passion. To make your spouse desire you again, you must be willing to risk trying something new, to risk being playful, to risk vulnerability. Sometimes your spouse may not respond immediately, but often they are simply waiting to feel that same spark before they give themselves permission to join in. Someone must go first. Let it be you. And here is something important. Desire cannot survive in the absence of appreciation for the body, not just your body, but theirs. Over years, people stop really looking at each other. They see the familiar, the ordinary, and they forget to notice the beauty in the small details. Desire comes alive when you begin to see with fresh eyes. Try this exercise in next time your spouse is dressing or cooking or simply sitting across the table. Pause and truly look. Not for flaws, but for the details you once admired. The curve of their shoulders, the way their eyes light up, the sound of their laughter. Speak it out loud. Say, I love the way you look when you laugh like that. Words of admiration turn the ordinary into extraordinary. It's not only about them, though. It's also about how you relate to your own body. Many people detach from themselves, focusing only on duties. They stop treating their body as something to be cherished, and instead treat it as a machine that must function. But your body is the instrument of desire. When you reconnect with it, not through criticism but through care, you naturally become more magnetic. Take care of your health, yes, but also move your body in ways that feel pleasurable. Dance, stretch, walk with intention. When you feel alive in your own skin, your spouse senses it without you needing to say a word. Another truth is this: desire flourishes in freedom. When your spouse feels controlled, micromanaged, or smothered, desire diminishes. It is difficult to want someone who feels like your warden. But when your spouse feels that you respect their individuality, that you give them space to breathe, to dream, to express themselves, then desire reappears, because desire is a choice. It cannot be demanded, only invited. When your partner feels they are free to choose you, their choosing becomes more meaningful. So, how do you create that freedom? By loosening the grip of control, by allowing them to have moments of their own, by respecting their need for space, for friendships, for pursuits outside the relationship. Many people fear that giving their spouse freedom will create distance. But paradoxically, it is freedom that draws them closer. When someone feels they are not trapped, they long to return. And finally, let us not forget tenderness. Passion is not always fairy. Sometimes it is quiet, soft, deeply tender. The look you give when you see your spouse sleeping peacefully, the way you reach for their hand without words, the gentle kiss on the forehead that says, I am here, I am yours. Tenderness is not the opposite of desire. It is one of its deepest expressions. When tenderness and playfulness coexist, you create a relationship where your spouse feels both safe and alive, and that is the balance in which desire thrives. So making your spouse desire you again is not about manipulation. It is not about pretending to be someone you're not. It is about returning to the very essence of connection, presence, surprise, admiration, freedom, tenderness, and risk. When you embody these, you remind your partner not only of who you were when you first met, but of who you are still capable of being. By now you can feel it. The question of desire is not a superficial one. It's not about tricks or techniques. It's about returning to the very heart of what it means to be alive in relationship. Desire asks is, can I still see you? Not just as my partner, but as the man or woman who can surprise me, move me, awaken me. And can I allow myself to be seen in that way too? Too often, people believe that passion naturally fades with time. But what I've seen again and again is that it doesn't have to. What fades is not passion, it's effort, it's attention, it's imagination. And when those are revived, desire often returns with a strength that surprises both of you. Because in long-term love, desire doesn't have to be the echo of the past. It can be the creation of the present. Think of your relationship as a garden. In the beginning, you planted seeds of attraction, curiosity, and adventure. They grew quickly because everything was new. Over time, weeds crept in, responsibilities, stress, neglect. The flowers didn't die, but they were hidden. What revives the garden is not longing for the first bloom, but tending to the soil today, pulling the weeds, watering what matters, creating space for beauty to emerge again. So how do you begin? Right now, to make your spouse desire you again, start small. One intentional gesture, one moment of true presence, one act of admiration. Desire doesn't need grand declarations. It needs consistent sparks. When your spouse feels that spark, they lean toward you. And slowly, those sparks become fire. But let me leave you with this. Desire is not only about your spouse's longing for you. It is also about your longing for yourself. To feel alive, to feel playful, to feel free within your own skin. When you carry that energy, your spouse feels it. But even if they don't notice right away, you notice. And when you notice, you become magnetic, not just to them, but to life itself. I often remind couples that the most erotic moments are not always in the bedroom. They are in the way you share a glance across a crowded room, the way you laugh together at a joke no one else understands, the way you create intimacy in the smallest spaces. These are the threads that weave desire back into the fabric of your relationship. And if you are listening to this and thinking, but it feels too late for us, let me reassure you, it rarely is. Desire can be reignited at any age, in any stage, when two people dare to show up again. All it takes is the willingness to risk being vulnerable, to risk being playful, to risk being fully alive with each other. Now, as you finish this video, I invite you to reflect. What is one thing you can do today, not tomorrow, not next week, but today, that would make your spouse look at you with fresh eyes? Maybe it's the way you touch them tonight. Maybe it's the way you speak to them tomorrow. Maybe it's the way you carry yourself with a spark of vitality that reminds them you are not just their partner, you are still the person worth desiring. Remember, love and desire are not the same, but they can coexist beautifully when nurtured. Love is about having, desire is about wanting, and when you balance both, you create a relationship that feels safe and thrilling, familiar and mysterious, comforting and electric. That is the art. So here's my final message to you. Never underestimate the power of your presence, your playfulness, your imagination, your courage. When you dare to embody these qualities, you don't just reignite your spouse's desire, you reignite your own. And when you do, you don't just improve your marriage, you enrich your entire life. If you found this conversation meaningful, I'd love to hear from you. Share your experiences in the comments below. Tell me what has helped you rekindle desire in your relationship, or what do you long to try? And if this spoke to you, please like this video and subscribe to the channel so together we can keep exploring the mysteries of love, intimacy and desire. Because remember, passion is not a relic of youth. It is a practice for life, and it is available to you right now if you dare to breathe life into it again. Here's to you, to your spouse, and to the beautiful possibility of being desired, not just once upon a time, but again and again and again.